Again, ladies and gentlemen, for those that are standing, we ask that you please be seated. In a couple of moments, the family will be coming in. If you have a cell phone or pager, if you could turn it to the silent mode. Officiating today is going to be Rabbi Michael Schwab and Rabbi Alex Friedman. The following individuals have been asked to act as pallbearers at the conclusion of their service will be Talia, Nate, Remy, Jonah, Ari, Jacob, Aaron, Ben, Micha, Ruthie, Ayala, Elon, and Aiden. Then a couple of grandchildren who will not be able to be present, Ilana, Peter, and Gabe. At the conclusion of the interment, the family will be sitting Shiva at the Hirschwartz residence, 1020 Chaucer Lane in Highland Park, where they'll be there for the traditional Shiva. There are times on the service folder that you received when you arrived to the funeral for the Shiva times, and for those that are joining on Zoom, it's at the funeral home website, all that Shiva times. For those who will be joining the family in procession to the cemetery, we will be lining up right in front of the parking lot. We'll be placing a magnetic flag on your vehicle, and we ask to have your headlights and hazard lights on while in procession. Again, if you're standing, we ask that you please be seated. And if you have a cell phone or pager, please turn it to the silent mode. In a couple of moments, the family will be coming in.
We've gathered here to pay tribute to the loving memory of Renée Hirsch. And in her memory, I'm going to recite from Psalm 23. And in the handouts they gave you, there's also Psalm 23 in English. After I recite it in Hebrew, I'll ask everyone to join me who wishes to recite it as well in the English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo achsar, binoteh sheyar bitzeni, al mei menuchot yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'magle tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz hamavetz, lo yira ra ki atay imadi. Shivtecha mishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shochan neged tzorai, tishanta v'Hashem en roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yurdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai li'orech yamim. Please join me in the English if you wish. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Rabbi Friedman will now also read a psalm in memory of Renee.
This is the 15th Psalm. Mizmor David, Adonai, mi yagor ba'orecha, mi yishkon bechar kodshecha, holech tamim ufo al tzedek, v'dover emet b'yovavo. Lo agal al leshono, lo asa rehu ra'a, v'charba lo nasa al kerevo, nivseh be'enav nim'as, ואת אדוני יכבד, ישמע אדוני רחבה ולא ימיר, כספו לא נתן בנשך, ושוחד ענקי לא לקח, עושה אלה לא ימות לעולם. A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own, and then shall you stand firm forever. Amen.
When I was speaking to Renee's children, they shared with me that on Pesach, there was a custom that their father and Renee used to recite something from Song of Songs. And so when we're thinking about biblical verses to honor her memory, I thought I would recite some of the verses that they used to recite each Pesach together in loving testimony to their relationship and the love of their children. Arise, my darling, my fair one, come away. For now the winter is past, the rains are over and gone, the blossoms have appeared in the lands, the time of pruning has come, the song of the turtle dove is heard in our lands, the green figs from on the fig tree, the vines in blossom give off fragrance. Arise, my darling, my fair one, come away. O my dove in the cranny of the rocks, hidden by the cliff, let me see your face, let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet, and your face is comely. Same thing we can say about Renee today. We wish we could see her face, hear her voice, for her voice is sweet and her face was comely. But surely we will continue to see her beautiful face and hear her lovely voice in our hearts and in our minds. The great philosopher Ben Sira once wrote, "When parents who have taught their children pass on, that passing is not death. As long as the child lives, and even more so, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, there is part of that person that can never die. When alive, a parent rejoices with her children. In death, that parent will not grieve, for she knows that her legacy will be handed down, l'dor vador, from one generation to the next." Speaking of family, a number of the family members would like to pay tribute, and I'm going to call up Debbie first to say a few words. Tissues here.
Great, thank you. A few fun facts about my mom. She could speed draw a caricature of Donald Duck in 30 seconds. She could write holding a pen with her toes. And she could perfectly apply a Band-Aid to her foot with a grabber. She was a woman with many talents. Her most impactful talent, however, was her ability to feel and express love. Her early models for love were her father, Herman, who was an affectionate yet volatile man, and her mother, Sorrel, who was reserved and not emotionally available. Her parents had a contentious marriage, so much so that even though my grandparents were married, my mother never let her parents visit us together because she did not want us to witness the negative behavior between them. It was profound that my mother did not have good early examples in mothering or marriage. Then came my father. Many of you know the story of my parents' whirlwind romance, engaged after just 3 weeks and married 3 weeks later. People thought they were crazy. For those of us who witnessed this love, there was no doubt they were beshert. My mom was 22, an old maid by standards in 1962, and my father was a 32-year-old bachelor. With a lot of dating experience behind them, it did not take them long to spot each other and see the package of potential for a life partner. In a way, their fast romance was not surprising to any of us who knew my parents, as it only took you about 30 minutes in conversation to feel like they were old friends. They revealed and shared the essence of themselves so freely and organically in just a short interaction. So you can imagine these two young, vivacious individuals spending an entire week together at Green Mansions, a Jewish singles resort in New York, talking and talking and talking and laughing and eating and getting to know each other pretty well, pretty fast. As the story goes, the first night they met, after some games of ping pong, my dad brought my mom a grilled cheese sandwich. After she ate one, she actually ordered a second one. How comfortable she must have felt with Jay to have pigged out in front of him on their first date. I always loved that story, envisioning them so young and new to each other and falling in love. Jay and Renee had a magical chemistry that produced and amplified love, and we kids marinated in this love that filled our home. The story of their meeting is just the first example of their approach to life. Take informed risks, seize the moment, and make life a joyful adventure. They stretched financially to buy their house in Glencoe when I was just 2 and my brother David was a baby, living with boxes for a few years until they could afford furniture. But boxes are so much fun to play with. Every single simple, mundane experience was special with my mom around. She had an exuberant zest for life. She was truly the mama duck from the book Make Way for Ducklings, leading her 4 children, in order, of course, Debbie, David, Lauren, then Susan, on adventure after adventure, keeping us safe from harm, but exposing us to the world and all its exciting opportunities. We rarely ate out, but these memories come to mind. One of our favorite treats was dinner in Chinatown at King Hua, followed by shopping in the little markets where my mother would get her lychee nuts and we would get small boxes of candies wrapped in rice paper, both considered delicacies in our family of origin. A few special times, we sat at low tables on the floor in this Japanese restaurant called Azuma Sukiyaki. My parents saying, "Not everyone in the world sits on chairs, kids, you should know this," as we leaned in to hear more stories about their 2-month-long honeymoon in Japan, Cambodia, and Thailand. My parents spoke about the world from experience, and we were their eager audience. On special occasions, we went to the Palmer House Hotel, where my father moonlighted as the house doctor in his early days in Chicago. And we ate at this Polynesian restaurant called Trader Vic's. How many kids were eating Polynesian food in the 1970s? Only kids like us, who had parents who were so naturally drawn to and intentional about exposing us to diverse and interesting experiences. These experiences were not only about food. My mom was a lover of art. Check out the walls of her house and you can see an eclectic collection from around the world. We had a lifetime membership of the Art Institute of Chicago, which we visited regularly. She was a lover of music. She had season tickets to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and schlepped me to piano lessons and Susie and Lauren to violin, insisting that we practice every day, of course, until we were all quite accomplished musicians. She was a lover of ballet, a dancer herself as a teenager. We never missed a nutcracker in December, and she continued to attend the Joffrey Ballet with Susie into her 80s. She was a lover of nature. How do I begin to describe my mother's love of nature? She was like a child in a candy store, full of wonder, beholding the beauty of the world before her. To hike, and did we hike, or even walk in the backyard with my mom, was to feel the awesomeness of the universe in discoveries big like the mountains and small like the petals of a flower or a cool bug. She was a lover of knowledge and learning, a World Book Encyclopedia salesman extraordinaire. In the middle of dinner, she would often say, "Susan, grab the bee book so we can look up Bhutan." And we would read and learn about it together at the dinner table. She was a lover of design. She always had creative ideas about how to rig something to be more functional. And we would comment on how they should hire Mom to improve their product. For those of you who know my brother David, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She was a lover of plants As a self-taught horticultural enthusiast and green thumb, her classic comment was, "I love getting my hands in the dirt." Even dirt was fun. She volunteered at the Botanic Garden for over 40 years, and she had a house and garden chock full of flowers, orchids, and succulents, and all varieties of growing green things she collected and nurtured and appreciated every single day of her life. Speaking of nurturing, how many of you here felt nurtured by Renée? If you did, raise your hand and look around. You were not alone. Of all her skills and talents and interests, nurturing was her signature brand. She loved babies. If you had a baby, she sought you out, observed how you interacted with your child, taught you how to play with your baby by example, and then made you feel like the most expert parent that ever lived. After years of nurturing us kids as a stay-at-home mom, she nurtured babies and their parents through her work as an early interventionist at CEDAW, the Special Education District of Lake County. Always rewarded by her work, she loved the daily, meaningful, and sometimes life-changing interactions she had with her babies, as she called them. This nurturing extended to her colleagues, my father's colleagues, her friends and ours, our stepfather David and his clan, her children and grandchildren, and even the person she just met at the grocery store or on one of her many trips. As children, our friends flocked to our house to get a spot at our kitchen table or island, just to be in the presence of my mother and father, who nurtured with reckless abandon. Everyone came for a stay or a meal at our home: cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, all kinds of extended family and friends and students. They loved having people around. My parents' nurturing had a simple recipe: provide a warm, loving welcome involving hugs and smiles, feed people with home-cooked meals and home-baked treats, never cut the time short so everyone has time to get comfortable and start sharing. Listen closely, and then share your common experiences so you show that the person was heard and understood. Remember the details and refer to those details the next time you see the person. Show interest in their stories and tell your own stories. Talk about the tough stuff, not only the happy stuff. Cry together. Hug people again. Did I mention feed people? Because that's a big one. As the night goes on, break out the ice cream and a bunch of spoons, create a cocoon of love and laughter, express your love for people through direct words and physical touch, and then model that love, because actions speak louder than words. When my father died, one of David's friends shared these words with us, and I'll never forget them. I always envied your parents, because I always envied you, because your parents were the only parents I knew who ever openly expressed their love. I saw them kiss. I never even saw my parents hold hands. I loved going to your house because it was filled with love, and I wanted my parents to love each other in the same fun, playful way your parents did. I will never forget that night I had dinner with your family and your mom sat on your dad's lap. It's amazing what things leave lasting impressions. Lasting impressions. We are left with so many lasting impressions from my mother's life. Memories of our time together, the way she made us feel, my close relationships with my siblings, which are there because of her, the stable foundation she provided to us kids so that we could go out into the world and feel secure in ourselves and confident and happy and loved and equipped to raise solid and close families of our own. Thank you, Mom, for letting me be so close to you. I will miss you so much and will always love you with all my heart.
Now I'm going to call up David to say some words about his mother. If you need them, go ahead.
Pardon me? Oh, sure, thank you. Okay, duckling number 2. Sorry. Mom, it is so hard to say goodbye to you. After 57 years of being your child and 23 years of being a parent myself, I am so grateful to have been brought into this world by you and nurtured by you. I feel very blessed that you were so good at being my mom. I have learned so much from you about people, the world, how to be resilient, and how to extract all of the sweetness from life. Your love and guidance show up in every aspect of my life. You invested everything in our family. You did this with each of your kids, then our spouses, and with every grandchild. You set a tone where we all felt valued and special in our own right. You patiently let me find my own way of being myself, without ever telling me who to be or how to be me. You made everything feel special and fun, even the most mundane things. Having such a rich family life has yielded strength and solidity to who I am as an adult. I know that my marriage to Danit, my relationship with our children, Ben, Maya, Gabe, Micah, and Ruthie, and all my other relationships are in some way a product of the healthy and loving connection that I had with you. You taught us all how as babies, self-esteem starts with the first loving gaze and gentle touch of his mother. And you did have such a loving gaze and a gentle touch. Your love for Dad and his love for you was epic and an inspiration. You loved one another so deeply and openly for all of us to see. I feel so lucky to have grown up in a home with that energy. I know you loved me deeply, but you were also very intentional about letting me go. Just before I married Danit, you sat me down and you told me that if there ever was a disagreement between Danit and you, that I should align myself with Danit. That you would measure your success as a mother by my ability to primarily attach to another woman. Not the stereotype Jewish mother at all. So self-aware and intentional, like everything you did. You modeled for me how good boundaries and clear communication made real intimacy possible. That conversation was so meaningful to me, and it finally contextualized an interaction that we had when I was 5 years old. We were sitting in the big red station wagon, waiting for Dad to bring a pedal car out from the Toys R Us. In that moment, I asked you who you loved more, me or Dad. You thought about it for a minute, and then you replied that you loved us both so much, but you loved Dad just this little much more, as you held your fingers up in a tiny pinch. I remember this so vividly, and we recalled this a few months ago, and we laughed. There is not very much that I could teach you about parenting, but I believe that the better answer would have been that you loved us the same amount. Only you loved Dad like a husband and me like a son. But you get a pass on this one. That was pretty solid for 1971. My mother, Renée, was a mensch extraordinaire. She was a superhero of authentic humanity. She was a very real person with vulnerabilities and so many compensatory strengths. Her love, her warmth, good judgment, and her grace were so overwhelming that I truly have struggled to find meaningful flaws in her character. Renée was a strong personality with strong opinions and a desire to always engage honestly and forthrightly. She had rules, and she stood by them. For example, she was always vocal about wanting us to eat in the kitchen, where food belongs. Flaw or just annoying to my very immature self? For your information, I have the same rules in my house. She never restricted access to anything. No plastic covers like the preceding generation. But she deeply valued taking care of her belongings and herself. Her makeup was always perfect. Her house was lived in, but so well cared for. Her car was always clean and well maintained, and on and on. Renée liked things the way that she liked them, and she made no bones about this. She held herself to the highest possible standard, and others to a very high standard. You could always rely upon her to tell the truth. I hope that I am like this as well. Renée was always fair, honest, and generous. You always knew where you stood with her. I remember when I was 10 years old, and not in a showering phase of my life. We were sitting at the piano, very close, side by side on the bench. And she sniffed the air, and then she leaned over and whispered gently in my ear, "Honey, you smell bad. Maybe you should consider showering more." It was funny and a little embarrassing, and a compelling enough message that I did indeed start showering. Renée was a great communicator. Most people would feel close to her after a single meaningful interaction. She was so compelling, always invested and loving. She would remember the details of her interactions with every person she met. She stored these details like precious gems that she was entrusted with. Her memory of these details of people's lives was astonishing, and she maintained this right up until the end of her life. My mom had strong opinions, and she would share them sometimes, unsolicited. These opinions were forged from her real-life experiences, and I now believe they were a generous offer of her wisdom. As a young person, for me, it was not always easy to hear her feedback. I would feel so annoyed with her. But at some point in my 30s, I had an epiphany. I was annoyed with her primarily due to the fact that she was right so often. And it really did pay to listen to her. Renée would say goodbye, but she would never leave. She did not want a good thing to end, ever. She savored the time with all of us here today. On this point, it is hard to believe that she has left us now. She really did hang on for as long as she possibly could have. She willed herself to live long enough for her granddaughter Ilana to marry Peter and to separate the joy of this union from the sorrow of her death. Her death is so sad, but it really was her time, and she successfully made it to the end of her amazing story and her life. She died in her home with her other David and with her 4 children surrounding her, loving and holding her. It was the best possible death. So on to her superhero story. Renée's origin story was covered by Debbie, but I often wonder how my mom became the person that she was. How did a little girl born in an unremarkable family in Brooklyn, New York in 1939 become the truly remarkable woman who is a beacon for all of us? What were the forces that directed her as she moved through life? She started her life with significant adversity, but somehow she had the spirit, the brains, and the guts, neshama, sechel, and kishkis, to find her true self, to grow into a great woman, and to share herself with all of us. Renée was a storyteller. She would retell important stories again and again. Even if we told her that we knew the story, she would insist on retelling it with the same gusto as if it were the first time. Despite my impatience in those moments, I now realize that these same stories are the ones that I remember, and I call upon them as useful anecdotes. This tradition, one of having an oral history, brings such depth to our family. Stories and anecdotes encapsulate a lesson about life and are not just wind. Stories are deeply meaningful and allow the message to persist across time and experience. They serve to bind us all together in our shared humanity. I'm going to share one of her stories with you now. It's the gumball story. This story is my mother's equivalent to my father's light bulb story, which if you don't know, you really should. It's a classic. The gumball story has been told and retold, and I have tried to find the purest version to share with you today. When Renée was a child, her friend's mother shared this story with her, and it made a meaningful impression. I believe the gumball story shaped her and oriented her as she engaged with life and all of the important branching that happens with every decision we make. So the story goes. Her friend's mom was a 4-year-old girl, and she went to the candy store with a penny in her pocket. She asked the shopkeeper for a gumball, and he gave her 2 for a penny, a red gumball and a white gumball. The little girl popped the less desirable white gumball into her mouth and put the prized red gumball into her pocket, saving the best for later. At that moment, the shopkeeper's wife overheard that her husband had given 2 gumballs for a penny when the price was a penny each. She insisted that the little girl give back the remaining gumball. Yeah. What the heck? The little girl was heartbroken and angry with herself for not eating the red gumball first. This story may have resonated with my mother because of her early adverse experience, which compelled her to seize every opportunity that crossed her path. She really was amazing in this way. She was brave and gutsy, willing to be her own advocate, and mostly unafraid in practice. My mother's interpretation of this story was that when you really want something, you should just go for it, and that deferring gratification is not always a virtue. Throughout her childhood, she broke so many barriers, participating in many activities reserved for boys during that era, by just going for it. The older she got, the truer this became. Just go for it. I know I only know him 3 weeks, but what the hell, I'll marry him. In this example, Jay was the red gumball. This was a driving force in the way that she parented us. She always encouraged us to explore and to try new things that were likely to be red gumballs. She was the mom that would always try to say yes. Yes, of course you can keep the snake you found in the ravine. Yes, we can keep the baby raccoons that were living in our chimney. Yes, we can convert your bathroom to a dark room, since you don't really shower in it anyway. Yes, you can take things apart and try to fix them. Yes, at age 12, you can climb up on the roof and install a 30-foot-tall radio antenna for your CB radio. And also, yes, you can install it in the back of the station wagon for road trips. Yes, you can travel to crazy and faraway places and potentially dangerous places around the world. And by the way, can I meet you there for a couple of weeks? Yes, you can and should try new things, always. She was such a fun, encouraging, and passionate person. Her message was always yes. You have my support to engage and enjoy your life in any way that you think is right for you, as long as you are also a good person and you don't forget to make some plans for the future. Any experience that involves being passionate, having fun, exploring, learning, having relationships, making babies or not making babies, being generous, warm, offering loving kindness to others, in essence, living fully engaged with life. This is what makes us the people that we are. These are all the red gumballs. And yes, they are so delicious. Mom, you lived your life so very well. Thank you for being the person that you were and enriching all of our lives. You will never be far, as you will always be part of me and the rest of us that you touched. We will pass on what we have learned from you and speak your name often. Kiss and hug my special Maya and Dad for me.
I'm now going to call up Lauren to say some words about her mom.
Bear with us. My mom said she always loved a good funeral. My mom was an amazing woman. She was so complex and multifaceted that I was having a hard time condensing my thoughts down neatly. However, the word that universally describes my mom is irrepressible. She had a boundless energy that infused all that she did. She had a zest for life, a fighting spirit, a sharp and creative mind, and true enthusiasm for engaging with people and experiencing life to the fullest. She taught us to appreciate the big and small things in life. She understood the importance of sharing as a means to joy and happiness. She taught us how to savor the good things and to process, but not dwell on the difficult. She loved delicious food and was a wonderful cook. She would gather the 4 kids around her when we were younger and slice up kiwis or mangoes or kohlrabi. First tell us how special this food was, then give us each a piece, close her eyes and say, this is delicious. It was as if she was literally demonstrating to us how to enjoy life. She loved being Jewish and maintaining a Jewish home. This was an organizing force in our family life and instilled the love of our Jewish identity in all of us. She planned wonderful holiday dinners and parties for Shabbat, Pesach, Sukkot, and our B'nai Mitzvot. She made our family and home a safe, happy, and special place to be. She cared deeply about her relationships with her children, but also about our relationships with each other. She made it a priority to foster our sibling relationships, insisting on compassion and respect towards one another, that we could trust each other, and that we had fun together. When we were children and my parents would go out on Saturday nights, we would be hugging her goodbye at the door, getting lost in her fur coat and her intoxicating perfume. She would gather us together and tell us to take care of each other while they were gone. She was referring to that night, but really she meant throughout our lives. She knew that if we were lucky and worked at it, we would have each other for love and support and as partners in life. Long before I knew anything about developmental frameworks, my mom was creating and instituting a framework of her own. She was such a natural teacher, nurturer, and joiner that it came to her innately. She always led by example. She was the ultimate role model. She loved sharing her knowledge and teaching others, but she also knew how to make you feel confident enough to adapt the new skill as your own and become independent. There's so many examples of this in our lives, and I'm sure many of you have had this experience with her personally. When we were kids, she had a huge vegetable garden on the side of the house. She also set each of us up with our own small plot of land in the middle of our circle driveway, for which we were responsible for the planting, weeding, and harvesting. She encouraged this kind of participation, experimentation, and ownership. This is the same way in which she taught parents how to interact with their babies in her work as a parent-infant educator, how she taught us to cook and bake. There's a reason we all make Renée's famous challah, and in all of her interactions. Her trust in you made you believe in and trust yourself. She modeled for us how to manage so many important roles and experiences in life, how to be a good life partner, good friend, good aunt, how to parent, and how to be resilient in the face of adversity, especially in how she handled the loss of my father and her numerous and ongoing health challenges. She taught us that after great loss, you can go on to have another loving and fulfilling relationship like she had with my stepfather, David, for 22 years. She was always such an optimist and knew how to live in the present. My mom adored babies and little kids, but also big kids and adults, especially if those people were her grandchildren. But honestly, she truly delighted in all of her interactions, whether with her family and friends or with total strangers she met and engaged with. For an introvert like myself, sometimes it felt like a lot, but she instilled in me the importance of connection to others and achieving this by understanding people and their experiences. I usually think of my dad as the main influence for my becoming a psychiatrist, but I think it was equally related to my mom and all that she taught me about caring for others in a sensitive and present way. When I had my own children, my mom was my biggest teacher and cheerleader. She was so enthusiastic about every tiny developmental stage from the moment they were born that the excitement was contagious. I would leave every interaction with my mom and Jacob or Aaron, and I couldn't believe how I had created such amazing children. Her observations, intense interest in the details, and tricks of the trade enriched the experience of parenting for me and Josh, as I know she did for my siblings as well. If I was frustrated or annoyed with one of my kids, and this happened on occasion, She was able to validate my feelings, offer advice from her vast experience with kids, and then remind me to not say anything negative about her grandchildren. She was always so positive about her kids and positively reinforcing about her parenting. She so cherished her role as Grammy. She delighted in her every interaction with her grandchildren and had an amazing ability to meet each of the kids where they were, developmentally, temperamentally, and in terms of their interests. She thought every one of them was just the best. So it is her irrepressible nature in life that will allow her to live on in all of us. Whether it was her encouragement of our talents, her advice about relationships, or something she taught us, I know that I will think of her every day and do my best to continue to make her proud. We will all need to figure out how to continue living without our center of gravity, but I know we will draw on the lessons she taught us. She was deeply loved and will be sorely missed.
Now I'm going to call up Susie to say some words about her mother.
This is a Mother's Day card that I wrote my mom just this year. Dear Mom, happy Mother's Day. I love you so much. It is always hard to put into words, but especially this year. Thank you for being the most loving, caring, supportive mom to me. Your hugs, your deep listening, your very presence makes me feel better and that everything is going to be okay. And on the fun side, you crack me up all the time. I love being with you, sharing stories, opinions, and funny little moments. To say that your personality tickles my funny bone would be the understatement of the year. I want you to stay alive forever, of course. But I can't be unrealistic. So I will just ask that you please keep fighting for as long as you can comfortably. I don't know how to thank you, Mom, for everything you've done for me and are for me. I love you beyond words, always and forever. Susie.
Thank you, Susie. I'm now going to call on Mitch, one of her son-in-laws, to say some words.
It would be easy for us to remember Renee for all the physical battles that she waged, and for the most part overcame. Rarely does one have to overcome and endure such challenges. She approached each diagnosis, whether it be cancer or arthritis or back problems, with bravery and determination. But to me, what was most remarkable about Renee was her emotional resilience. I first met Renee and Jay in 1984 when I was a 20-year-old college kid. And when I walked into her home in Glencoe, I knew I was meeting someone special. And it was not just because I had fallen in love with her daughter. I suspect that when I rang the doorbell, she was darting around the kitchen with her phone cradled between her cheek and shoulder, tethered to a phone cord that probably stretched to Milwaukee. She greeted me that day with the same beaming smile and warmth and welcoming grace that would be her practice for nearly 40 years. There was no way I could have known that 5 years prior she had been diagnosed with an incurable blood cancer and had endured numerous surgeries and had the beginnings of chronic pain that would last for the rest of her life. That was already in her rearview mirror, never to be forgotten, but nothing to dwell on. Life was too good and there was too much to do. Renee was a whirling dervish, the likes of which I've become all too familiar. She passed the same trait on to her 4'10" daughter. Sure, there would be relapses every few years. She would go on to have more treatment, chemotherapy, a stem cell transplant, and there would certainly be pain and suffering, but she always overcame the physical challenges. She reassured us that she would soon feel fine, everything would be okay, and we all believed her. Each medical challenge seemed to fuel her zest for life, the strength of her welcome hugs, her urgency for experiencing everything that life had to offer. When I was young, I just figured that was just what everyone did when they got a cancer diagnosis. But when I became an oncologist, I was able to put Renée's emotional resilience into context. And the more experienced I became, the more I appreciated the wonder of Renée. Family and friends would greet Renée by saying, "Wow, you look great," incredulous that this could be someone dealing with so many medical issues. Illness did not define Renée. It was the driving force for her to push on, to overcome, and to revel in all that was good in life. And that's when I began to tell my patients about her. I told my patients that the most difficult part of a battle with cancer is not necessarily the physical battle, but the emotional one. I told them that my mother-in-law was 20 or 30 or now 40 years out from a diagnosis that should have taken her life in less than 10 years. Somehow she had the emotional resilience to overcome it all and live a full and joyful life. There are no medicines to ensure such an outcome. I can't tell you how it's done, but you'll have to work on it every day for the rest of your life, and it's not going to be easy, but Renée did it. Renée, thank you for being such an inspiration to your family, to your friends, and to me. You taught me more than years of school could ever teach. You were a wonderful mother-in-law, and I loved you with all my heart, and I'll miss you terribly.
Now I'm going to call upon Danit, her daughter-in-law, also to say some words.
I met Renée on the JUF chartered flight to Washington, D.C. for a rally for Soviet Jews. Renée was, as all of you can easily envision, her usual vibrant, warm, and friendly self, instantly likable, asking questions and taking a genuine interest in me, and I opened up to her so naturally that I now wonder if maybe my first Hirsch crush was actually on Renée and only later David. As it turned out, that conversation was the first of many meaningful conversations that I would have with Renée and that I would observe her having with others. Renée had this incredible capacity for connection. She listened with compassion and a true desire for understanding, drawing out and remembering the details of people's stories and responding with empathy and insight, leaving them feeling more deeply known and well-nurtured. Renée was always available to talk, and I trusted her wisdom and guidance and appreciated the reciprocity of our dialogue, taking turns listening and sharing. She was so capable of being present, and together we would process the layers of our experiences, whether joyful or painful or both. Our calls always ended with her positivity and optimism and a heartfelt, "I love you, honey." I felt so lucky to have another loving maternal relationship in my life. It felt safe and supportive, affirming and uncomplicated. Renée loved talking to me about motherhood, especially pregnancy and the years 0 to 3. She celebrated my becoming a mother with excitement. She wanted to know every detail about my pregnancies, calling me frequently during the early weeks, asking how I was feeling. And when I told her I was sick and nauseated and exhausted, she would say, "Oh, that's great," laughing at herself for this seemingly insensitive response and explaining that she was relieved to hear things were progressing. She delighted in my pregnant body, took me maternity clothes shopping, encouraging me to get hip and fun outfits, comfortable nightgowns that I wear till this day, and anything that accentuated my belly. She took me shopping for a layette, knowing that selecting outfits and imagining the baby in them was a fun way to prepare for motherhood. Looking at the onesies, Renee said, "Just wait until he has a poop explosion up and out the back of his diaper and all over his body." And she would giggle like she couldn't wait for us to experience a poop explosion. To Renee, the messiness, hardships, and joys along the journey were all manageable and wonderful. When the babies were born, she wanted to know everything about them and was tracking to see if they were thriving and reaching their developmental milestones. She had a keen understanding of infant development and took such pleasure in the inner workings and marvels of these emerging beings. And when she held these babies, her grandchildren, she cooed and smiled and gazed and loved each of them deeply. She was so happy that they had entered this world and that she and the rest of this family would get the honor and joy of loving them and watching them grow up. Indeed, Ben, Maya, Gabe, Micah, and Ruthie all have a unique bond with their Grammy and many specific memories of how she has enlivened and enriched their lives. When it came to family, Renee cultivated a core value around the importance of love and connection. She understood that the warm feelings of being embedded in and belonging to a loving family, whatever that looks like, is, as Renee and Jay used to call it, the good stuff of life. I remember during our Thanksgivings in North Carolina when in the morning, still wearing her pastel pink house dress, her headband and slippers, she entered the kitchen beaming as she watched cousins playing games, babies crawling, siblings chatting, all of us immersed in that loving, playful togetherness, and she radiated such contentment and joy. I see so much of Renee and David and his wonderful sisters. Amongst the most important is that they all have warmth and compassion, are nurturers, have a good sense of humor and a spark that draws people in. They are close, supportive, and fun-loving. And they have spent these past few days together, caressing and kissing their mom, hugging and holding her, recounting childhood memories, singing and telling Renee how much they love her, what a wonderful mom she was, staying at her side, and ultimately saying goodbye. A farewell like Renee had modeled for the kids when Jay was dying. Renee, I will really miss feeling your love and the way you made all of us feel so cherished and connected. We need wise women role models like you who remind us that family, love, and connection are the good things in life. Fortunately, those seeds have been planted by you and all of us, and we will continue to uphold these values, to seek each other out with kindness and love, to listen, to be present, to show up with an open mind and an open heart, to hug and touch and tickle, and to keep the good stuff flowing, along with mounds and mounds of whipped cream.
Now I'm going to call on Josh, her other son-in-law, to say some words about Renee. Tissues if you need them.
Yeah, so I also am an in-law, and as such, I wanted to give a couple of reflections about Renee as a mother-in-law, because Renee was a great mother-in-law, and we all know that is famously not an easy thing to do, and I think it deserves a little bit of credit and recognition in its own right. So by the time I joined the Hirsch scene, they'd had decades of making traditions and memories and jokes and eaten thousands of loaves of Renee's challah and millions of pecan tarts. So I entered this scene where everyone knew what everyone else was thinking, and I felt instantly a part of it. And Jay and Renee, who were the force behind this, really instantly made me part of the family. Now, of course, Renee had a very special gift for connecting with people. We've heard that over and over. And I've wondered how many times did Renee sit down next to a stranger and then stand up and hug goodbye a dear friend, because it was her way. But I still think that with family, every connection was unique and special, and this extends to in-laws. Every time she and I would get together, she would tell me ahead of time, "Josh, I cannot wait to have a beer with you. We're gonna have that beer." Now, this woman who had probably 2 beers a year was my drinking buddy. But in retrospect, I think it was her way, even when the kids and grandkids were around, of saying, we are gonna carve out this time and we're gonna be 100% together with each other. And she would ask me about my family and work. She would ask about experiments in the lab. No, really, she would ask about experiments in the lab, which no one ever asks me, but it just shows that Renee could connect with anyone about anything, and I'm really going to miss that. But most amazingly, as we've heard over and over, when she was with us, she took every opportunity to tell me and Lauren what great parents we were. So she, who had fought for so long to make her family exactly as she knew it should be, was equally happy for us if we did our own thing. She gave us that gift, and it was just really such a loving and generous and expansive view of family, and I just hope that we can continue that. So I was lucky to have known Renee for many years, but I had a lot more to learn. Renee, we love you, and we will miss you forever.
Now I'm going to call on Talia, one of her many grandchildren, and who will speak on her behalf and the behalf of the rest of the grandchildren. If you need them, there are more tissues.
Thanks. Gratitude, a theme I have heard on repeat since our Grammy left us on Thursday. Seeping through the sadness, mixed into our tears, is a profound sense of gratitude for who she was, the time we spent with her, and the impact she had on all of our lives. And there was just something so Grammy about that. Despite half a lifetime of health challenges and near-death experiences, her strength and hope seeped through, and mixed into her tears was always the gratitude for her wonderful life and family. For many people, it is granted that a grandmother eventually dies. And we knew this, but we were also starting to think she may be immortal. For those of you at my sister Ilana's wedding last weekend, you have learned I like flower analogies. And at Grammy's funeral, it certainly seems fitting to incorporate one. Second only to her family was her love of flowers. In January of this year, she gifted Nate and me a waxed amaryllis bulb. We were amazed by how the wax kept the bulb fully hydrated, so with little care, we watched as gorgeous red flowers bloomed. She told us it was a one bloom and done sort of thing. So when it bloomed a second time, and to this day still has green leaves, Nate said it was a perfect representation of Grammy's resilience. When you think it may be all over, it persists. For all of us, Grammy was like that wax encasement. We are all wrapped in her love and will continue to grow and blossom, knowing she is holding us tight with love and nourishment. What is not granted is having a grandmother as exceptional as she was. Grammy taught my siblings, cousins, and me several things. Imagination. She would tickle our backs at night and tell us stories from her childhood. Beep, 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 as her dad pulled up to her Aunt Sadie and Uncle Ben's farm. We imagined her picking up the warm eggs from the chicken coop as we drifted to sleep. Curiosity. Through her sassy toys and intentional activities, she guided us through each developmental milestone as we progressed through childhood. Exploration. She taught her love of travel through experience, taking each of us on a one-on-one international trip for our bar and bat mitzvahs, spending quality time with us as she showed us what the world has to offer. Confidence. On my bat mitzvah trip to London, she had me be in charge of the tube system, getting us to and from each activity. And I learned for the first time to navigate a map and a subway, a skill that I would carry with me with confidence in each new place I went after. Courage. This week I reread a journal entry from September 2 years ago. I was starting my fellowship year, transitioning from residency to being junior faculty, and feeling nervous for that shift in responsibility. I wrote what she said to me. It is normal to feel nervous in transitions, and it is a good thing. She put me at ease, hearing her honor my feelings while teaching me the value of humility during periods of growth. Pleasure. You could feel her enjoyment watching her take each bite of her ice cream with the whipped cream heaped up high. She taught us the pleasure of loving touch and to touch each other often. Generosity. She gave and gave to us, both with her heart, but also her financial support, and none of us take that for granted. Service. Throughout her career, she worked with low-resource communities, a population my mom then dedicated her career to, and to whom I've done the same. She instilled in all of us a passion to make the world a better place. Love. My mom and her siblings describe her as the most natural, loving mother. She passed that skill on to my mother, and for that I am eternally grateful. About 3 years ago, she decided it was time to see me be a mother. So over the course of that year, during our phone conversations, she would randomly whisper, "Baby, baby, baby," into the phone as if planting a seed for a brilliant idea. Throughout my pregnancy, I wished for her to be able to meet our baby, and when Remy was born and she came to San Francisco, it was a dream come true for both of us. As much as I wish she could see him grow up, it's been the biggest gift that she has been able to watch him grow and change during the last 15 months, old enough now to recognize her and call her by her newest name, Gigi. With her words of encouragement, praise, and guidance, her support was integral throughout this first year, and I hope to follow in her and my mom's footsteps in my own motherhood journey. Just as the waxed amaryllis is hydrated with all of the nourishment it needs, she ensured that for each of us. She bottled up her teachings of imagination, curiosity, exploration, confidence, courage, pleasure, generosity, service, and love so we could grow. And like that wax coating, she ensured we felt protected, safe, and loved so we could grow to be our fullest and most beautiful selves. We promise to pass on everything you taught us to Remy and his growing generation. We will miss you so much, Graham. Life will not be the same without you, but that wax coating is indestructible. I love you.
One of my favorite Jewish laws, articulated by Maimonides, is that when you greet another person, you should always do it with a smiling and bright countenance. Imagine the improvement in the world's happiness if everyone with whom we interacted took this law seriously. Well, Renée Hirsch, she epitomized that mitzvah. She was our model. To be greeted by Renée was to feel warmth, happiness, and joy. Her countenance expressed to each person that the moment you were sharing with her, well, that was a special one. And she was grateful to be with you, and you felt grateful to be with her. For Renée was such a bright, caring, fun-loving, grateful, enthusiastic person who was so full of love. Her presence, her smile, her warmth, her love will be missed by all of our community here at Bethel, by her many, many friends, and by her very much adored and adoring family. It's my sad honor to express my condolences to each and every one of you. The great thing is you know how much she loved you, and she knew how much you loved her. And that is something that you will always have forever. My prayer is that the words that have been shared today and the traditions that we observe provide you with some measure of comfort at a difficult time. So a lot has already been said about Renée, so I'll just say a few more things. I just want to share, which has already been shared, but I want to say it in my way, that Renée was just the type of person everyone always wanted to be around. I saw it at Kiddush, I saw it when she was in small groups. She was just a person you wanted to be with. She was warm and smart, enthusiastic and friendly. She was easy to talk to. She always looked great, and she seemed ready to engage with you. She projected an authentic sense that she was grateful to be with you, to be wherever she was. I saw her mostly here at Shul, and I thought, wow, she must love Shul. This must be her favorite place. But I imagine she felt that way about almost every other place as well. That's just who she was, and I so appreciated that about her. She was also a woman who cared deeply about being Jewish. She loved Shabbat, she loved holidays, and as you heard and know, she particularly loved baking challah. And she traveled to Israel, she loved the Jewish state, and she did an amazing job in instilling this love of Judaism in her wonderful family. It was a true honor to have her as a part of our congregation. I also so admire, which was, Talia said this a bit, what Renee did professionally. Started working in the public schools on the South Side, helping young mothers connect to their infant children, creating developmentally engaging toys for babies, and then offering her services to CJDS for years to help that wonderful school get started. She was such a talented, compassionate person, and this was demonstrated in every aspect of her life. I also want to highlight a blessing that Renee had, for she had 2 amazing marriages in her lifetime to 2 incredible men. She and Jay had this wonderful partnership together and were completely devoted to each other, raising 4 beautiful children and sharing an amazing life together until he unfortunately died before his time. But then in the year 2000, with some time and space between the deaths of both of their spouses, a mutual friend set up Renee with David Schwartz, a kind, intelligent, wonderful mensch of a man. David reflected that on their first date, they just talked and talked and talked. It was so natural that they discovered so many commonalities and shared values. In fact, they were so engaged that the waitress came by to ask if they were finally ready to order their food. And when they looked up, they realized it was almost time for closing, and they haven't even picked out their menu items. David, we know how much you loved Renee, how devoted you were to her during her medical difficulties, which unfortunately were many, how much you loved spending time with her over these years you've had together. Our heart at Bethel goes out to you in comfort. We hope that there's a small consolation in knowing that love reaches beyond the grave, that she will always be a part of your life, even though she is no longer physically beside you. So whether you remember Renee for the quote-unquote small things, like maybe images of her covered with dirt from gardening, or maybe her adventurous spirit that she was always willing to try anything, or making amazing costumes for her children from scratch, images of her on a tennis court or baking in her kitchen, or the big things, the way she made everyone feel loved, how much she gave of herself to her students and clients, what a great friend she was, how much she cared about Judaism, what an absolutely devoted and loving relative she was in every sense of the word. May we always, always remember Renee with deep respect, admiration, warmth, and love. Di zichra brucha, may her memory always be for a blessing, and please join me in saying Amen. Please rise if you're able as I recite the memorial prayer in her memory. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim, Kezohar Harakim Asirim Et Nishmat, Rivka Blima, Bat Chaim Levesara, Shalcha Liolama, Began Eden Temenuchata, Ana Bala Rachamim, Hastireh B'Seiter Kanafecha Leolamim, Utzror B'Tzror Chaim Et Nishmata, Adonai Onachlata, V'Tanuch B'Shalom Al Mishkava, V'Nomar, Amen.
Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalt the compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Renée Hirsch, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that the loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Now I'm going to ask the pallbearers to please step forward on this side of the casket as we escort Renee. Please remain standing.